And my question to you at that time was, seeing that, how could you have another opinion? How could it be based on the preponderance of evidence that you threw into the fray? And
based on a preponderance of, all right, well, let's go to this evidence. All right. Because like I said, everybody sees things differently, apparently. Well, let's go straight to it. Because we're going to do a quick little run through of what went down. Okay. He gets called in because, well, George Floyd tried to pay with something with fake cash.
Right here, this is a fake bill for the gentleman.
No, sorry.
The driver in there?
Blue bins.
Oh, which one? The blue one over there.
Which one? Yep. Just head back in.
Okay. All right.
Go to the car.
You see your hands.
Damn, man.
Stay in the car. Let me see your other hand.
I'm sorry.
Let me see your other hand.
Please, Mazal.
Both hands.
Do nothing.
Put your fucking hands up right now. Let me see your other hand.
Now, this is probably the only part where I get judgmental. I'm like, all right, bro, you didn't have to upstrap on bro like that. But this is how they do it.
Right. What I do though? What do we do?
Put your hand up there. Put your fucking hand up there. Jesus Christ. Keep your fucking hands on the wheel. Keep your fucking hands on the wheel.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry, Mazal.
Who else is in the car?
This is my
Put
friend.
your foot back in.
Sorry, Mazal. I'm so sorry. God dang, man. Man, that was my mom, man.
Step out and face away.
So sorry.
Step out and face away.
Please don't shoot me, Mazal. Please. Don't shoot me, man.
Step out and face away.
Can you not shoot me, man?
I'm not shooting. Step out and face away.
Okay. Please, man.
All right, now that we're tired of the reindeer games, let's get to the arrest.
Stop resisting, man.
Let's get some handcuffs put on him.
Yes, you are.
Now, note to self, while George Floyd was in that car and the police knocked on that door, he did consume. That's when he consumed the drug cocktail. Remember this.
Stand up. Please, man. Stand up for me. I want to go back. Stand up. I want to go back, man. I ain't gonna do that. That's wrong, man. Come on, walk with me. Walk with me. Walk with me. My thing, man. Stand up. Why you doing me like that? Stand up.
Now, bro, and for all, this what goes down the black community. Are y'all fucking stupid? Like, bro, he's a career criminal, a career one. This man has been locked up for robbery. When police see this man on his radar, they see that crime and they're like, hey, yo, I can't play with him. He's held a pregnant woman up with a gun. Are y'all fucking retarded? Okay, never mind. My bad.
Come on. I just want to stop through. We're trying to get out of the street here so you don't get hit by a car. That's it, man. Take a seat. Sit down for me. Thank you, man. Thank you, Mazal. Sit down.
Now, let's get to where you're trying to put in the car.
Please.
A moment.
Please. Get out the door. I don't want to talk to you, man. Please, let me talk to you, please. Man, you ain't listening to nothing we're saying, so we're not going to listen to nothing you're saying.
Can you watch that car? Just make sure no one goes in it.
I hear you, but you are going to face this door right now.
Listen up. Stop.
I don't know anything. I don't know anything y'all telling me to do, man. I'm not a listener, man. I'm not. You can ask him. He know me, you know. God, man, I won't do nothing like that, y'all. Why is it going on like this? Look at my wrist, Mendoza. I'm not the kind of guy.
Still.
Stop. I'm not the kind of guy.
Stop.
You please. I'm not the kind of guy, Mr. Officer. Please.
Face away.
Please, man. Don't leave me by myself, man. Please. I'm just claustrophobic. That's it.
Well, you're still going in the car.
Got anything sharp on you? I won't do nothing to hurt y'all. Do you have anything sharp on you? Sir. Not even like a comb or nothing?
Like I said, guys, you got any questions, comments, disagreements? Please go ahead and super chat it in. $2 and up. I'll go ahead and read it out loud, engage with it. We can have that conversation. All right, let's get straight to it.
Nothing. I don't have nothing. Why y'all doing me like that, Mr. Officer? Please crack it for me and stuff, man.
Stand up straight.
I'm claustrophobic for real, Mr. Officer.
You got him?
Could you please crack it for me? Please.
Yes, I'll crack it.
Stay
I
with me,
will.
man.
I will.
Please stay with me, man. Thank you.
Nice of him.
God, man. I didn't know all this was going to happen, man. Please, man. I didn't know my
That's the strange part.
See,
Why are you having trouble watching? Because that was my client.
I'll roll the windows down, okay?
Please, man. Please don't do. Take a seat. I'm going in, Mr. Officer. I'm going in. No, you're not. I gotta go in. Take a seat.
Grab a seat.
Man, y'all don't believe me, Mr. Officer.
Take a seat.
I'm not that kind of guy. I'm not that kind of guy, man.
Take a seat.
Y'all, I'm gonna die here. Take a seat. I'm gonna die, man.
You know what's so sad about George Floyd? He always played this very sympathetic role. This is like what his go-to part was. You ever seen other? We should probably go through other arrest footage of George Floyd so y'all can see the pattern. I'm telling you.
Take a seat right now. And I just had COVID, man. I don't want to go back to that.
Take a seat. I'll roll the windows down. Hey, listen.
Dang, man.
Listen.
I don't want to win. I'm claustrophobic. You ain't gonna win. I'm claustrophobic. I got anxiety. I don't want to do nothing to them.
I'll roll the window down.
Man, I'm scared as fuck, man. You made a mistake. When I start breathing, it's gonna go off on me, man.
Pull your legs in.
Okay. Let me count to 3. Let me count to 3 and I'm going in. Please. You can't win. Please, I'm not trying to win. I'm not trying to win. I'll get on the ground or anything. I can't stand this, man. He know it. He know it too, Mr. Officer. Y'all hear me? Don't do me like that, man.
In the car.
Okay, can I talk to you, please?
Yes, you get in this car. We can talk.
I am claustrophobic.
I'm hearing you, but you're not working with me.
God, I'm claustrophobic, man.
Now, you see, they're trying to put this man in the car. Now, if this man would have went in that car, there'd have never been a George Floyd situation. Went in the car, drove off, we'd have never had this. Look what he's doing.
Here, I'm gonna pull you
Get in the car. In the front. Please.
No, you're not getting in the front.
I'm claustrophobic. I was
in the car.
Okay.
When has anybody ever been put in the front of a cop car? That's hilarious.
Please. Fine. My wrist, man. My wrist, man, please.
Yeah, stop.
I'm on the ground.
Whoa. What'd he say? What'd he say? Hold on. They got him in the cop car, but what happened?
Please, take a seat.
I can't breathe. Hold on. Let's go back.
Get in the
I'm
front.
claustrophobic. I was
Get in the car.
Okay, man. Okay. I'm not a bad guy, man.
Get in the car.
I'm not a bad guy. Man. Please,
Take a seat.
Please, man. Please. No,
Take a seat.
I can't choke. I can't breathe. Please.
Now, nobody's choking him right now. No, they're grabbing his legs. They're trying to restrain him. Nobody's grabbing his neck or anything. So all of a sudden he can't breathe. Like, isn't that a bit strange?
My wrist, man. My wrist, man, please. I can't. I'm on the ground.
I want to lay on. What do you say? I want to lay on the ground.
Fine. My wrist, man. My wrist, man, please. I can't. I'm on the ground.
Lay on the ground.
I'm going down.
Get in the squad.
I'm going down. I'm not going to do anything.
Bro, you look down a heart attack shit, man. Get in the car.
I know I can't breathe.
Get in the car.
I can't breathe, man. I can't breathe.
Take a seat.
Please, man.
And look, they're lifting him up too. So, and he's still saying, I can't breathe. So he was low-key losing breath long before Derek Chauvin put his knee on him. Huh. Weird, ain't that? Isn't that kind of strange? Like, huh? Now? Like, wait, what? I thought he couldn't breathe only until the knee was on his neck. How is he losing, lung capacity? Or how is he losing breath now when there's no knee on his neck? Because wait, I thought the left said that the knee was what took him out. He shouldn't be yelling nothing about I can't breathe until that knee's on his neck. What's going on? I thought that was the reson why he died.
Does he want to jail? He's under arrest right now for forgery.
Okay.
What's going on?
For what?
Let's take him out and just.
For what? Please, man. I can't fucking breathe.
Hey, come on out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Get him on the ground. Yeah, just get on the ground. I appreciate that. I do.
Right.
You got your restraint. Hobble.
Yeah.
Okay. I can't breathe.
Grab that.
Yeah.
I can't breathe.
Thank you.
I can't breathe.
Stop moving.
Mama.
Yeah.
Mama.
One of the front cops.
Right.
Mama.
Right here. That's what it was. There it was. All right, got it right there. And since it was leaning more towards his one side of his traps, and he was leaning up with it, yeah, it kind of didn't look like it's on his neck, but it's not.
This guy. All right. All right. Oh my God.
And if he's being choked, how's he still talking? Like I said, it doesn't sound like he's being strangled. Because if he's being strangled, how is he able to yell out like this? To be honest, it sounds like his heart's giving out. Like, yeah, it sounds like this is what happens when your heart's giving out. When you're having a heart attack and it's slowly stopping, and you're losing that breath. Like, this doesn't sound like he's being choked.
I can't believe this.
Oh, the cardiac problem.
I can't believe this. I can't believe this. I can't believe this, man. Mama, I love you. Reese, I love you.
You got hobble?
My kids, I love them. I'm dead.
Mine's in my side. It's listed. It's labeled. It says hobble.
Can't breathe.
Can you get up on the sidewalk, please? One side or the other, please.
My face get up bad.
Here, should we get his legs up?
Oh, sorry.
Just leave him.
Oh my God.
All right.
I'm dead.
Hopefully, Park's still sitting on the car. They were.
Look at my
He
face,
was acting
man.
very well. I'm assuming so. He wouldn't get out of the car. He wasn't following instructions.
Yeah. Now, I believe.
Relax. Man, I can't breathe my face. Just get up.
I mean, you can't breathe, you can talk though. That's what I'm saying. It kind of seems like his heart's kind of giving out. Like I said, they do say he had cardiac problems as well. So fentanyl, cocaine, speedball, like a little concoction. You have heart problems. Yeah. What do you think's gonna happen? Honestly, what do you think? But you know, I'm pretty sure that's not enough to sway any, like not all y'all, but those of us who know the real, we know how it is. There we go.
All right, though.
Yeah, I mean,
Good so far.
my knee might be a little scratched, but I'll survive.
And that is when my man met his demise at that point. I mean, it's tough to see, but we gotta look at the facts here. Now, let's get back to this debate. Now that we understand what we're dealing with here, and now we got the full context.
Hear about. I'm talking about the visual impact. So let's stay right there, Ben. I am a black man, and I see this black man on the ground, face down, handcuffs behind him. Face is imprinted into the pavement. The knee of the police officer is on the back of his neck. He's literally saying he can't breathe, to one point crying for his mama. And it happens for over 9 minutes. I understand from a technical perspective, from a specific analytical perspective, forensic evidence, et cetera, fentanyl in the system, et cetera. I got all of that. My point is, and my question to you at that time was, seeing that, how could you have another opinion? How could it be based on the preponderance of evidence that you threw into the fray in order to ask for this man to be pardoned? I'm just going by, like, there are certain things that you just see, and 1 + 1 = 2.
So, I mean, Stephen, actually, if you go back to my tweets at the time, May 30th and June 1st, if you look at my tweets, I'm saying the same kind of things you're saying right now. I'm saying the same kind of things at that time that everybody else is saying, seeing the tape, because there's no way to look at the tape.
I saw that.
And not be sort of shocked by what you're seeing on the tape, obviously. And then I think that the mark of a reasonable person is to change your opinion as the evidence changes. A lot of evidence emerged between the time that the tape was released, that horrible 9-minute tape, and the time the conviction actually happened. I mean, there's a full trial, there were autopsy reports, there was witness evidence, there were other people whose testimony was taken, there were multiple medical specialists who were called. And so in looking at all of that, that's the way we're supposed to adjudicate whether or not a person deserves to spend 22 years in prison, not based simply on our immediate gut response to the tape. And again, I had the same gut response to the tape that you did, and I think that everybody did. I think actually that tends to be the gut response of people when we see a lot of police activity. Actually, it turns out that the police do a lot of things that look really rough on tape and really difficult on tape, and this was one of those things. And then as we later learned that, for example, the sort of tactic that Chauvin is using there was actually trained by the Minneapolis Police Department, right? It's a submission technique that's used if you have a person who's resisting arrest, or if you learn during the course of the investigation that George Floyd was saying, I can't breathe, before he was even taken out of the car. He says, I can't breathe on the longer tape 6 times before he's even taken out of the car. I mean, it's a very long interaction with the police officers before you get to that.
Thank you. Then I did not just prove that. It was a long interaction, bro. This is a 30-minute video, 30 minutes, 11 seconds. I only played you 16 of it. I played you 16 because wonder why he's dead after this. Proof. He's not talking no more. This is the 9 minutes. After that, he was done.
He's gone. Yeah, he's gone.
He's gone.
What the heck? Okay.
We can't yes. This was from the time that there was a complaint made on George Floyd. This whole 30-minute video from when the man died, they lift his body away and then they go check in with the clerk. Yeah, that is what y'all was missing. 30 minutes, a whole 30 minutes. That's what you'll be. Honestly, you're missing a whole. Honestly, you're missing a whole 16 minutes of what actually happened with George Floyd. A whole 16 minutes. Did you not see the part where the man was trying to get him in the car and he says, "I want to be on the floor"? George Floyd was only on the floor because George Floyd asked to be on the floor. Remember that part. Remember that. All right, let's get back to it. Because I think I cooked on that one. That was fun. Miss Liza, that video is heartbreaking, but it does need to be shown. It does need to be shown. Okay.
It turns out the police do a lot of things that look really rough on tape and really difficult on tape. And this was one of those things. And then as we later learned that, for example, the sort of tactic that Chauvin is using there was actually trained by the Minneapolis Police Department, right? It's a submission technique that's used if you have a person who's resisting arrest, or if you learn during the course of the investigation that George Floyd was saying, "I can't breathe," before he was even taken out of the car. He says, "I can't breathe" on the longer tape 6 times before he's even taken out of the car. I mean, it's a very long interaction with the police officers before you get to that 9-minute tape, the part that we all saw. And there's a part of the story that you can't see on the tape, which is the reverse angle. You can't see
exactly. And that's what I showed you guys, the reverse angle that none of y'all saw, that they didn't see in court. That's the wild part about this. Like, they released this after the fact. So yes, when you finally see the officer's perspective, you're like, yeah, hold on. Like, George Floyd was only on the floor because he asked to. Hold on, this man was saying, "I can't breathe" way before a knee was even on his neck. Crazy. He definitely.
There's a big crowd. They're shouting at Chauvin. Chauvin is responding to that crowd. One of the preliminaries to getting up off of Floyd that way is to call what's called a code 4, which is where it's an all clear, where you feel that the crowd is not a threat to you. In fact, even the EMTs who showed up to provide care for Floyd didn't call a code 4 when they arrived on scene because they thought that the crowd was too threatening. So once you take into account all of the facts, if your opinion doesn't change and the fact pattern is different from what you originally thought it was, then you're not doing your job as a commentator. So I can have the same gut response that you have when I first see that tape. The question is what you do.
Hey man, shout out my man Charles Coe. He said, "Thanks for showing the video. Most don't go the extra step, just leave the chat to argue." Nah, trust me, I had to, bro, because a lot of people don't know about that 30-minute video. And trust me, when I first seen it, I was baffled. Like, bro, when you first start watching it, you're damn near all like, once again, like I said, I'm watching it under the old pretext that, okay, yeah, Derek Chauvin killed him, under that old presumption. Once you actually look at the video, you're like, hold on, what am I looking at here? Like, that 9-minute video showed this man with his, all right, the knee on the neck, he's saying, "I can't breathe." That's what I seen. What you mean he's saying, "I can't breathe" before this man is even in the damn car? And then you tell me he gets put on the floor and he's still saying, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe." So this man wasn't able to breathe for a while now. He's been losing breath for a minute now. How can we blame that on Devin? I'm just wondering, how can you honestly blame that on him?
When more of those facts emerge, when you do see more of that evidence emerge, when you do read the testimony and see the autopsies.
See, but I believe, and this is just my belief, because in fairness to you, you're absolutely right. You did put out that tweet initially, and your position was it was shared by the Hannitys of the world, the Mark Levins of the world, and various others, obviously with a lot of people on the left as well, before the preponderance of evidence that you're alluding to came into play. I get that. So in fairness to you, I have to say that. But sometimes I'm going to say this to you because you're a pretty brilliant dude. Nobody can deny it. Well, what you've accomplished with the Daily Wire, what you've been able to do in your career. I'm just reading something. You were a syndicated columnist at the age of 17, for crying out loud. This is who you are. This is who I'm talking to here. Is it possible that sometimes we could be so brilliant that our intellect gets in the way of common sense? For example, what I mean by that is this, Ben. It was a knee on his neck for 9.5 minutes. If that didn't happen, is he still alive? I'm not.
Actually, you know what's crazy? I mean, let's add weight to this. You've seen George Floyd. George Floyd is a built guy. George Floyd was 6'4", 200 and something pounds. That man was been in the penitentiary doing a push-ups, baby. Now, here's the point, though. Derek Chauvin is about 5'7", 5'9", 145 pounds. I mean, bro don't even got the weight to kill George Floyd. Bro don't even got weight.
I'm not talking about today because anything could have happened to you. I'm just saying the fact that Derek Chauvin's knee was on his neck, that to me should speak for itself, because if the man is clamoring for you to get off the back of his neck while you got him handcuffed into the ground, okay, why is it wrong for us to stop there and say that was excessive on the part of the police officer?
How is it excessive when you do? Okay. All right, look, we need to look up George Floyd's criminal history, because y'all must not know what these guys were looking at. When they see George Floyd, this man has a record. Once you have a record, yeah, it's going to get rough for you. It's like this. Like, all right. It's like a guy with a possession record who gets pulled over. Every time a cop pull you over, even if you've been clean, since you got that possession record, it's always going to be oh, you got any drugs in the car? It's always going to be that. So George Floyd, since he's always had drugs on him, since he's always been stealing, since he's went to jail for armed robbery, what would you do if you're pulling up on somebody in the street and they've been convicted of armed robbery and you're a cop? What the hell are you doing? You coming out gun first, because you don't know if this guy has a gun. He's pulled a gun on a pregnant woman. What makes you even pull a gun on a grown man?
Because you had him contained. He wasn't a threat to you. What's wrong with that thinking?
Okay, so there are a couple of things that could be argued by the defense, and in fact were argued by the defense in this case. One of them, again, was that this was a trained technique by the Minneapolis Police Department to keep somebody in this position so long as you have not called a code 4, which is where you say there's an all clear, and now you can move the person who's on the ground into the ambulance, for example, if you've already called the ambulance, or back into the police vehicle. When it comes to the actual question as to causation of death, right, you have to be the proximate cause of the death. It's not just enough for it to be a contributing factor, because it turns out that increased stress can cause death in a person who has a human heart that is significantly larger than normal. The autopsy showed that Floyd, unfortunately, had an incredibly enlarged heart, much heavier than normal. His lungs were much larger than normal person's lungs because of heavy and over time drug use. He had 11 nanograms of fentanyl in his system at the time per milliliter of blood, which is over 3 times what it would cause normally to kill somebody.
Exactly. Like, bro, when I was looking up the nanograms in his blood and I found out the lethal dose of nanograms, I was like, bro, of course this shit killed him. Oh, no shit. No shit, it killed him. It's killed lesser. It's killed other people with less dosages. But then, bro, the whole court want to sit there and ignore the toxicology report. I'm like, yo, I'm watching Madness and live right now. It made no sense.
The original autopsy report openly said that if George Floyd had been found in his house in the same exact physical condition, they would have called it death by overdose. So, all of these things taken into account raises the question of reasonable doubt, right? The standard in our criminal justice system is in fact a reasonable doubt standard. And that raises the question as to why there's not, at the very least, reasonable doubt. So you can say that your sort of first jump at this is.
And this is where my reasonable doubt come in, though. I mean, on to case study, on to files number 1. I mean, files number 2 is like, we got to break out the video files on them. Let's go.
George Floyd. It involved the Minneapolis Police Department, did not involve any of the officers who are defendants in this case. But what the defense wanted to highlight from that was that during that arrest, Floyd was crying and acting irrational, and that he was treated at a hospital for accidental drug ingestion after the fact.
So this man, one, habitual complainer, habitual crybaby, and he habitually loves to down drugs. Like, he just loves eating the drugs when the police pop up on his ass. And now he didn't down the wrong cocktail, and what I tell you, what I tell you, it happened.
Now, what they want to draw out is that this was substantially similar to how he acted on May 25th, 2020, almost exactly a year later when that arrest happened. You see that video we have there of body camera footage on those officers while they were making that arrest.
George Floyd, big guy, like I said, 6'4", 200-something pounds.
They approached him as a passenger in an SUV, and you can hear them talking about, instructing him rather, telling him not to swallow a pill that was in his mouth, and he calls it a yellow pill that he swallowed. Take a listen to some of that footage.
Go ahead and undo your seatbelt.
Please, I don't want to be shot.
I don't plan on shooting you. I'm just saying, just take your time. Okay, relax. Just undo your seatbelt. Let her take care of her guy. Just keep your hands out where I can see him. Hey, let me.
And shout out to my man Fire Ant. He said it should have been a mistrial as soon as we found out they withheld autopsy information contradicting the narrative. Exactly. You know what? Shout out my man's Fire Ant and Charles Cole, man. Appreciate you guys. Exactly. Like, bro, there's a lot of things that it should have been a mistrial on. A lot of things. And then once this video came out, bro, I ain't gonna lie, they should release that man immediately. They should release him immediately. Like, yeah, I ain't gonna lie, bro. We were trying to make you guilty because we were trying to race bait everybody into a riot. My bad. Look, bro, you was part of the BLM agenda, and we needed you to start a riot. Okay. Okay.
Keep your hands where I can see him.
Shoot, nothing starts a riot better than a white man killing a black man.
Okay, put him up on the dash. Put him on the dash. I'm not gonna shoot you. Put your hands on the dash. Put your hands on the dash. The last time I'm going to tell you that. It's simple. He keeps moving his hands around.
And remember, same police department been dealing with this man every single time. You don't think they know this man's criminal history? You don't think they know that every time they see this man, they do have to upstrap because they don't know that he does this every trip?
Listen to what I have to say.
Put your hands on
Okay.
top of your head.
Put them on your head.
Top of your head. Open your mouth. Spit out what you got. Spit out what you got. I'm gonna tase you. Spit it out. He's eating all
Don't
kinds
you jerk away from me.
Put your hands behind your back.
That was one yellow pill, boss.
Okay, now slowly come on out.
Hand under
Put your
hand under hand.
Come on, lean back. What do you got there?
Here we go.
Of these particular incidents, the judge has been averse to them coming in. When he was in a pretrial hearing and this information was initially presented to him, he said he doesn't think that it's going to be relevant because these defendants didn't know about these prior arrests of Floyd or how he acted in the past when they were arresting him on May 25th of 20.
Of course they do. How the hell are you going to let the prosecution run off with that? They have a criminal database. You know that, right? Like, what's wrong with y'all? And then the man was committing a crime in front of the store, still parked outside the store doing drugs. I'm walking up on that man with a gun too, because I'm wondering how reckless is he to try to use a fake 20, walk out of there as if the guy didn't say, hey, yo, this is fake. He just walked out and then go do drugs in his car. Like, the man is overall reckless, like just reckless.
2020, and we see that in the judge's order that came out yesterday. He denied the admission of these incidents that are in George Floyd's past, including that 2019 arrest that you just saw, but also his 2007 conviction for aggravated robbery. Okay,
I was wrong. Hold on. So the aggravated robbery was done outside of that. Okay, so it was done outside of the of where he did where this charge happened. What, Minnesota, Metropolitan? I forgot. But excuse me, Texas conviction for aggravated assault. Oh, I mean, aggravated robbery, but yeah, it was basically aggravated assault. Yo, denied. So you tell me this man committed a heinous crime, and we can't kind of put that in as a like kind of how he put himself here. I mean, I'm just saying. So you tell me we can't bring up 2019, we can't bring up 2007. That kind of lines up to how he put himself here. Crazy. I mean, wow.
That happened in Texas. So you see there is a mugshot that was taken of him in 2009 after he had completed his sentence in the Department of Corrections in Texas and was released. So something that was that far back in time, something the judge said he didn't think would be relevant, and we see in his order that is not going to.
The judge didn't think it would be relevant. The judge said, I didn't think that was going to be relevant. Wild, by the way.
Come in before this jury, anything at this point relating to Floyd's criminal background.
All right, we get nothing about George Floyd's past will be a part of this trial. Prosecutors want to get into some of Derek Chauvin's past. What did the judge say about that?
So prosecutors had a list of 8 different incidents that they picked out of Derek Chauvin's nearly 20 years on the force. And
damn, and that's what it said. That was disgusting. So I'm like, hold on. We can't bring up this guy's criminal past, but we can bring up this man's policing history. Like, are you serious? Like, nobody wants to speak out against that. Like, hold on. How come we're able to we can't bring up this man's life as a fucking criminal, but we can bring up this man's life as a police officer? Bro, come on, that's unfair. You know, like, that's just operating out of all types of things.
You're sitting here.
On video. There we go.
He's guilty. Look at the knee on his neck. There's no damage to his neck tissue, by the way, in the as to causation of death, right? You have to be the proximate cause of the death. It's not just enough for it to be a contributing factor, because it turns out that increased stress can cause death in a person who has a human heart that is significantly larger than normal. The autopsy showed that Floyd, unfortunately, had an incredibly enlarged heart, much heavier than normal. His lungs were much larger than normal person's lungs because of heavy and overtime drug use. He had 11 nanograms of fentanyl in his system at the time per milliliter of blood, which is over 3 times what it would cause normally to kill somebody. The original autopsy report openly said that if George Floyd had been found in his house in the same exact physical condition, they would have called it death by overdose. So, all of these things taken into account raises the question of reasonable doubt, right? The standard in our criminal justice system is, in fact, a reasonable doubt standard. And that raises the question as to why there's not, at the very least, reasonable doubt. So you can say that your sort of first jump at this is he's guilty. Look at the knee on his neck. There's no damage to his neck tissue, by the way, in the autopsy report. You can say all of that, and you can say that that's a plausible explanation. I won't even make the case that that's not a plausible explanation. I'll make the case that a plausible explanation is not enough to convict a man in court, especially based on the surrounding circumstances, the amount of pressure that was brought. This was not a fair trial, was one of the points that I'm making. So when it comes to the actual trial itself, there are members of the jury.
Bro, it was completely politicized. Like, it was completely politicized against Derek Chauvin, and that's not fair. That's what I'm saying. If you took the political element out of this case, it'd have been handled correctly. But it seems like if this man Derek Chauvin would have got off, I ain't even gonna lie, it kind of seemed we'd probably had another riot pop off again. So it's almost like the people kind of like twisted the judicial system's hand into being like, yo, if you don't convict this man, we're gonna destroy the city. And let's be real, you cannot act like that was not the climate. You cannot act like that was not the climate at the time. If this man didn't go to jail, y'all was gonna riot again. You guys know y'all.
Or at actual rallies wearing shirts that said "I can't breathe" before they were actually on the jury. There are members of the jury who have openly said that they felt public pressure to convict in a particular way. The president of the United States, or one of the people who was running for president of the United States at the time, Joe Biden, was openly calling for his conviction. The Minneapolis city paid the family of George Floyd, I believe it was a $27 million payout in the middle of the trial. So all of this tends to go to, is that an impartial jury, right? These all have serious consequences for the jury system. And so there's really a few separate questions. One is, was Chauvin responsible for Floyd's death? I think on that question, I would say no. You can say yes. I would say at the very least, there's reasonable doubt. And then there's the question of the amount of pressure that was brought on the jury in this particular case to bring a verdict. This was the most highly publicized trial of the modern era by a long shot, because the incident itself had spurred so much public angst and outrage and massive protests involving 20 million people and riots that had cost the taxpayers some $2 billion or insurance companies some $2 billion. It was the most highly publicized trial probably since the OJ trial. And because of that amount of public pressure, did Chauvin receive a fair trial is obviously a very crucial question here.
But it sounds like your position is that this is more of a political issue as opposed to a policing issue. And what I would say to you as a black man in America, that there are times, and there's a preponderance of evidence throughout the years that shows that policing has been an issue as it pertains to black men, which is one of the things that we constantly bring up. So when that incident happened, I'm thinking about the officer himself, Ben Shapiro, and his intent.
I know this may sound petty, but I'd have to go case by case on that. Bro, these young cats or some of these guys, okay, look, on the innocent guys, on the innocent side, there's people who overreact to the police. Like when they see them, their hearts start pumping and they overreact to them just out of pure fear and anxiety, okay? And I guess that's understandable. And then there are the dumbasses who get aggressive with the police, who then are telling what they gonna do and what they not gonna do and act like that's gonna end out well. I mean, like, you feel me? There's both sides to this. And it is, I would have to go case by case before I say that, oh, that they treat black men, like they treat black men all harshly and all that good stuff. I mean, like, the police have been cool to me. They've been cool to me. Like, I'm be real with you. The only time the police ever got rough with me is kind of when I was in a situation that I shouldn't have been in, where shit was seriously happening. I just happened to be there, and they're like, nah, all right, bro, all right, you got to go to the floor. And I'm like, all right, it is what it is. It is what it is. You're right. I'm in a crazy place right now, in a crazy situation. I get it.
From the standpoint, you're having your knee on the back of his neck, no matter what, from a medical perspective, we can deduce may have transpired in the end. If you didn't have your knee on the back of his neck for that amount of time or exceeding 9 minutes, this would not have been the outcome. And because you were insensitive to that, as a trained police officer who should know better, there should be a level of culpability that comes in your direction. So when somebody looks at you, I look at, and this is where I wanted to go as well. I'm looking at a Ben Shapiro, and this is what I meant when I asked the question about you being about if George Floyd was a Jewish person. I owe you an explanation for that, so I want to give it to you right now. You are known as a proud Jewish individual, incredibly supportive of the Jewish community, being amongst them, Israel, other things. And I was bringing this up because I said, if that were a Jewish person, the conclusion that you ultimately reached, would you have been patient enough to draw that conclusion, peeling from the information that was deduced on an objective level to reach the conclusion that, hey, you know what? I don't think he should have been put in jail. That's where I was going, because I know how defensive, or I shouldn't say defensive, but a defender of the Jewish community that you are. And that's what I was thinking along those lines.
I mean, but I certainly hope so, because I can name you a dozen Jewish criminals who absolutely deserve to be in jail, right? And Jeffrey Epstein was a Jew.
No, I'm just talking about that kind of incident.
Hell, right? I mean, I think that
I'm just talking about that kind of incident.
And my point is that whenever, I'm also a lawyer, right? I mean, my identity as a Jew does not mean I have solidarity with a criminal who happens to be a Jew, or a person who's in a controversial law enforcement confrontation who happens to be a Jew. I mean, my job is to literally remove myself from it. And I think also that, as those original tweets show, I don't think that you have to have racial solidarity with a person in order to feel empathy for that person's situation. I think that the whole basis of a democratic republic, or us having a conversation right now, is the fact that we can speak to each other across racial and identitarian lines.
Right.
And so,
yeah, and bro, that's what I'm saying. Like, let's take race out of it and everything, and let's just talk about justice. Let's just talk about the evidence and everything else, and let's leave race out of this. Let's leave the whole, the white man trying to repress the black man and all that. Let's leave that out of it, and we can honestly see what this is. This was a mishandling of justice. This was a politicized trial that went in the wrong direction.
Again, I think that there are an enormous number of people in the country who disagree with me, by the way, who share both my race, and a lot of Jews who, I would say the vast majority of Jews disagree with me on this, or many white Americans who looked at George Floyd and had exactly the same reaction. And as you say, initially, I had the same reaction as you, and that had nothing to do with race. And so the kind of idea that let's put it this way, if race is a barrier to logic, then race is the problem, not the solution. Right? Let me ask you this. I mean, if you looked at, you said before that you didn't look at the autopsy report, you're not taking a lot of time looking at the evidence or the autopsy. What would it take for you to change your mind on the case? Or is there nothing that could change your mind on the case because you saw the tape, for example?
Okay, that's actually a good question, because y'all do hard line too hard on that tape. It's like, yo, what would it take? What would it take? Would it take for them to see the full 30-minute video of the police officer? Was it going to take the toxicology report, the pictures of the man's dead body that shows there was no bruising on him, around his neck? Like, what would it take? That's what I want to know. What do y'all want to see?
Well, it wouldn't take much, and this is why I said this, because normally I would.
My bad. But that was a really good question, because really, no. What do y'all want to see? At the end of the day, I really do want to know. What would it take? Are y'all always going to hard pin off that 9-minute video? Because there's a reason why we're saying that it's not what y'all think it is. We're going beyond a 9-minute video that is included in our thoughts. Remember, this is not forgotten. But when you're bringing the toxicology report, criminal history, the police footage, it's kind of hard just to take everything off the 9-minute video. I'm be honest with you. It's a little hard when you allow yourself to take in other evidence in this trial, or other evidence that was in this case.
Look at the autopsy reports or whatever. I saw people bringing up his arrest record. I saw people bringing up fentanyl in the system. I saw all of these things. And all I could come to, Ben, fair or unfair was that none of that matters if he wasn't on the ground with a knee on the back of his neck for 9+ minutes. Because I'm looking at a trained police officer who should know better. I looked at the experts who were saying, with their trade, there was no reason, and you saw it, I'm sure you saw this, and not to say that you would embrace it with the level of sincerity that others may, because I know the level of skepticism that you look at when you see the news outlets. And by the way, I don't blame you. I'm with you on that, okay? But I would say to you, listening to experts talk about how police officers are trained and pointing to the fact that Derek Chauvin had no business being in that position and putting George Floyd in that position, particularly once he was handcuffed and contained. To me, that, along with the ultimate outcome, is all the evidence I need. And that's where we might differ.
That's the problem, bro. You can't just go off a 9-minute video without looking at everything. It's like you're only looking at part of the evidence. So you just can't sit here and say, oh, well, I'm just going to go from that 9-minute video and I just seen a white man kill a black man. And that's where I'm coming from. It's like, okay, well, yeah, you're talking to somebody who not only seen the 9-minute video, but who's seen the full 30-minute video of the police officer, who read the toxicology report, and who knows of his prior crimes. It's like, to be honest, Stephen A. Smith, shit, bro, I ain't gonna lie, you're not informed enough to have this debate with my man. That's the fact of the matter. And I like Stephen A. Smith. But he's not informed enough to have this debate.
I mean, that's totally fair if we differ on that. I guess the question I would ask you is, given the fact that that was a Minneapolis Police Department trained protocol, given the fact that Floyd did ask to be removed from the car, I mean, in the lead up to the situation, the part of the tape that nobody watches, he was actually outside the car. The police officers move him inside the car. He says he's claustrophobic, and then he claims 6 consecutive times that he cannot breathe while he's in the car.
You know, for the naysayers, right? I do want to be fair. I want to be fair to y'all. I do want to be fair. And I'm going to cite my sources on this one, because I want y'all to go out there and look at the video, right? Because, you know, you got somebody in the chat who's saying, oh, you only showed 16 minutes of a 30-minute video. Was that 9 minutes included? And I'm like, I mean, dog, you missed the point where I say it's from a different angle. So it's not going to be the same video that you've seen from that young lady's camera. So I don't know why you're being a little slow, but I got you, right? I got you. Now, you can look up full body cam footage of George Floyd's arrest. That's all you got to do is look that up, and it'll be by police activity. Yeah, shout out police activity. Make sure you follow their channel. But yes, full body cam footage of George Floyd's arrest. That's it. Police activity. That's all you got to do. That's all you got to do. And I promise you see exactly what we're seeing. And you could be better informed on what was going on. That's all you got to do. Take a nice little 30 minutes.
The car. So if the idea,
if you ain't lazy and, you know, you don't just want to be led by liberal media all day, you know, you'll take that time to go research it yourself.
Is
instead of lying about it like I usually do.
That it was the police officer's knee that deprives him of breath. He was already claiming that he couldn't breathe inside the car, suggesting he was already in the middle of some sort of medical event, right? And then he was brought outside the car. I guess the question that I have for you, again, is what level of evidence would need to be shown for you to get to reasonable doubt? I mean, you seem incredibly certain, right? All I'm saying is that the reasonable doubt standard is what pertains in criminal justice. What would it take to get you to reasonable doubt? Or is there no reasonable doubt that could be achieved simply by dint of the fact that he had his knee on his neck? By the way, it's not for the full 9 minutes. There are minutes where it's on his back. I mean, even the prosecution acknowledges that. The real question is, I think, the last 50 seconds, right? The last 50 seconds of the tape where Floyd stops breathing and Chauvin's knee is still on his neck. That is really the question as to whether this goes into criminal charge territory. Otherwise, he ends up being in a position where he's actually just using a typical subdual technique before you put the guy back in the car and you take him off to jail.
And I'm saying, to answer your question, there's absolutely nothing that could convince me that Derek Chauvin deserved a different outcome because of what you just articulated, what we saw, even if it's for the last 50 seconds. I'm not changing my position. I understand where you're coming from.
I mean, this is a real question. Do you think? So we've talked about race a little bit. Do you think that Chauvin was a racist? That this was a race-based crime, in your view?
Do I believe that?
Yes.
I don't believe that based on anything about his history that they articulated, because I know how people conjure up evidence to go at it. I do believe his actions indicated that. because I didn't see him doing that with anybody else. And the times that we were living in and the climate, as you articulated accurately, I might add, the heightened level of sensitivity that it exists because of brutality on the part of some police officers. By the way, I never say police brutality because I don't like to castigate all police officers that way. I know if I'm in trouble, I'm calling 911. Right. I'm not going to sit up there and denigrate police officers throughout this country, but there's rogues that exist in every profession.
I mean, bro, there's way too many good police officers just to shame them all. That's in my personal opinion. Actually, I ain't gonna lie, I damn near stand. Bro, there's way more good police officers than bad ones. And low key, the people who hate police officers are usually people who commit crime. And they get you to hate them even though you don't commit crime. I know it's wild. It's like you're talking to your criminal cousin about how much he hates the police. It's like, bro, I bet he does.
And I think there's rogues that exist with certain police.
Talking to your drug dealer cousin and uncle talking about how much they hate the police, you should hate him too. No shit.
Police officers. So to me, he came across as one, and that was my problem with it. Having said that, I want to get to something else because we're going to stay on this subject of race in this regard. When you saw the climate that exists, I understand you believe it was primarily instigated by the left. I want to know where you draw the line in the sand and in terms of veering away from the political and just looking at a case on its merit and saying, this is what I see. This is where I stand.
I mean, yeah, we're looking at a case on its merit. You look over all the evidence that's been provided by both sides. Yes, if you're looking on a case on its merit, Stephen A. Smith, you're not looking at a case on its merit. You're looking at bits of it. You're actually looking at one part of the case, that 1 9-minute video, and that's all he went off of. So he's not even following his own words right now by saying on the merit of the case. It's like, dog, then if you want to go on the merit of the case, please make sure you go out there and look up all the information, get all the evidence, and then we could talk about it. But right now, you're not really speaking to the merit of the case.
Completely devoid of politics. I'm not talking race. I'm talking politics, meaning this has nothing to do with politics. This is the climate that we're living in. This officer should have known better, etc. Do you ever find yourself in a position where you're able to dismiss yourself from the political impact of something or the political agenda of something to draw your conclusions?
Well, I mean, honestly, I think that in this particular case, this is a good indicator of trying to withdraw from a political sort of calculation, given the fact that, as some people have pointed out, on a pragmatic level, they've suggested that President Trump pardoning Derek Chauvin would be bad for President Trump politically. And the case that I've made is that's his job, determine what's pragmatic for him politically. It's my job to call something out as wrong when I see it to be wrong. In terms of criminal justice cases that have involved race, where I've removed myself on the other side, I mean, there are a bunch of them. Walter Scott, right, is a great example of a black man who was victimized by a white police officer. The police officer ends up convicted and going to jail. You're saying I'm not campaigning on his behalf because he deserved to go to jail, the officer in the Walter Scott case. There have been a number of horrifying or police-involved crimes in which the police officer deserves to lose his job and or go to jail, depending on the activities of the police officer. And you have to analyze those one by one. And I think that what we've seen, particularly from the legacy media over the course of the last many years, is that the only types of stories that tend to break into the news are ones with a black victim and a white police officer. And the media immediately jump to a particular narrative conclusion on the basis of that. And even if the facts end up debunking that conclusion, that narrative continues to be maintained. I mean, a good example of this might be Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, where the initial claim was that Michael Brown was shot in the back by a police officer in cold blood. And it turned out that every aspect of that story was false. And yet there are still people who will, sort of repeat the hands up, don't shoot lie that never happened. I mean, that literally never happened. And that was debunked by the Eric Holder Department of Justice, for example. So I think that we really do have to look at each one of these situations in isolation. We're talking about the life of a person. If you're talking about narrative, if you're talking about sort of generalized race in America, then I think that it's important to look at as much data as humanly possible. I'm a data-driven person, and so I'll look at everything from the studies of Roland Fryer over at Harvard University about police misconduct toward minorities, and it ranges on the scale, by the way. Well,
oh yeah, I remember that, bro. They was frying that black man. A Harvard professor, black man, Harvard professor came out and said, you know what, guys, I think we're over complaining because police violence is less likely to happen to black people. Bro, people lost their minds. So, yeah, police brutality. He said violence against black people is less likely to happen with police due to the heightened, I ain't gonna lie, honestly, due to George Floyd. It was kind of funny. Due to George Floyd, bro, there was a heightened type of response to, a heightened lack of response to Black people. There was. It is a bit wild, but yeah, that's exactly what's a result of that.
But what Roland Fryer studies tend to show is that, for example, there's no disproportionate killing of Black men by the police. There's disproportionate use of lower level uses of forces by police depending on the circumstance based on race. So that's something Roland Fryer has found at Harvard, right? Like that's
so he said, hey, like the police shootings don't happen, but excessive force, yeah. But come on, would you rather get shot or get thrown around a little bit? I thought so. You'll be okay.
The sort of conversation that I think is useful and interesting, but I think that when it gets telescoped into one particular case, and then that case is used as sort of the meta-narrative justifier, that's really negative, and that's really bad for the country. Because what we should be doing, you want to lose trust in the criminal justice system overall, telegraph all race relations into the OJ case, the Michael Brown case, the Derek Chauvin case, the George Floyd case. If you take all of America's race relations and you sort of put it on the back of one particular fact pattern, usually the fact pattern is not capable of carrying that narrative burden.
But Ben, isn't that easy for us on the outside looking at data, looking at analytics to draw those conclusions, as opposed to us having a personal experience or a personal investment in it? Like, for example, when it comes to the Jewish community, I would never think for 1 second that I could fully grasp and inhale what you experience as a Jewish person in the United States of America, when we've seen heightened levels of anti-Semitism, for example, and people alluding to those kind of things. Well, I'm not a Jewish person, so I wouldn't know. What about the argument that when we talk about Black folks, you can point to data all you want to, and we get that part, but the real experiences that we endure from time to time is not something that you can necessarily calculate. How serious do you take those assertions coming from a community, whether it's your own mind or anybody else's?
Obviously, it's true that we can never fully get into one another's shoes, right? That's just the reality of the world. And that's true beyond race. That's just true for individuals. You, Stephen, or me as an individual, you can't live in my shoes. I can't live in we're different people. We live different lives. But when it comes to making public policy, then the only sort of gauge that you can have really is the data, because anecdotal evidence, you can't make public policy for millions of people based on anecdotal evidence, because you can't legislate people's feelings. This is sort of one of my things. When it comes to trying to craft law, for example, making law based on the personal feelings of people's quote unquote lived experiences is a bad way to make law that is going to have to be generally applicable. Because I may have particular feelings about a particular criminal case based on my own personal experiences. But if we do that, then what you end up with is a really high level of tribalism, in which it's if your racial identity prevails or my racial identity prevails, really bad things can come from that. And the law is designed to treat people as equal individuals underneath it. And so, the relevance of lived experience, that may play a part in us being able to understand one another as individuals if we're having conversation over dinner, or if we're giving advice to each other about our kids. But when it comes to actually making public policy, it's a different thing.
Yeah, you got it. And you make a valid point about policy. When you talk about policy, you can't just go by personal experience. It's got to be the numbers. It's got to be the data. I totally get that. By the way, just as an aside, before I get to my next question, lung expert testified George Floyd died because his breathing was restricted. So I just wanted to point that out now, because again, that's with the weight on his neck. We got to remember that. But let me go to this. The Trump pardon, which you obviously was advocating for, would only affect Chauvin's federal conviction where he pleaded guilty for violating Floyd's civil rights. The pardon would have no bearing on his state sentence for second-degree and third-degree murder. Even if Minnesota Governor Tim Walz pardoned him, he'd remain in prison regardless of Trump's actions. Of all the things to ask President Trump to pardon, then, why this, Ben? Why this?
So I've asked President Trump to do many, many things. This is certainly not the only thing that I'd like President Trump to do, ranging from tariff policy to foreign policy to tax policy. There are many things that I ask President Trump to do on a daily basis on the show. On this one, because I think that it was such a driver of a narrative that I actually do think is false and has been damaging in the United States, which is the idea that there is a tremendous amount of racial tension in America, and that's accelerated over the past couple of decades. I think that it's important to elevate individual justice above, again, that sort of group identity-based narrative for the sake of the body politic. The BLM movement of 2020 was, at the very least, incredibly divisive, and on a material level, incredibly damaging to the United States. And I think that one of the things that I'd like to get back to in the United States is a time when we actually had pretty good racial feelings about one another, and it wasn't all that long ago. I think that if you go back to the polling data, Yes, if you go back
between the black community and the Jewish community, sure, but the black community and white community.
So if you go back to Gallup polls of 2012, literally 2012.
Okay.
In 2012, 75% of white Americans thought that race relations were on a good path with black Americans, and 65% of black Americans also thought that race relations were on a good path in the United States. And then by 2014, it had all dumped down into the below 50 mark for both whites and black Americans, and it never recovered from there. And one of the inciting events of that was, in fact, the riots in Ferguson and the sort of elevation of this narrative that America was deeply systemically racist in incurable ways, and that every inequality in American life could be chalked up to inequities that were buried in the founding of the country, and this whole broader racial narrative, which I think, again, that the best way to get past a lot of these problems, honestly, it sounds naive, but it isn't. It's just reality. Any group problems, the best way to get past a group problem, if you're an individual, is to talk with another individual and to treat another individual as an individual, as opposed to trying to reduce everything to group identity, which is the reason I think I objected so strongly when you started talking about racial identity with regard to this case. Because my whole point was, when it comes to interpersonal situations, the best way to treat other human beings, of course, is not as a member of a race. The best way to treat them is as individuals. And of course, a race is a component of their identity, but you treat them as an individual regardless of what their race is.
Yeah, but my pushback with you would be, Ben, I came at what you said, not at you. You see what I'm saying? Because there's a lot of things that you say and do that I don't disagree with. You know, I'm a centrist, and there's some things, well, damn it, when you make sense, you make sense, okay? We're having this discussion right here. I'm listening to some of your points. I'm like, he's making sense on something. I mean, I get it. I might disagree, but I can't refute where you're coming from. It makes a lot of sense. And what I would ask you before we go, because I know you got to get on out of here, and I can't thank you enough for your time. And again, I'm going to come on your show when you ask me to as well. I really, really appreciate it. I'm not going to run from it. But I got to ask you this. When you talk about just treating individuals as individuals, one could easily argue that Ben Shapiro, with over 7.2 million followers, by the way, on his YouTube show. Okay, let's get that out the way with the Daily Wire and what you've been doing with that for years. Folks,
which has been, I mean, by what around times, they're going bankrupt.
Are not necessarily treated as individuals. There is groupthink. There are, and I'm not talking about just you. I'm talking about all of us. I'm talking about all of us. I'm guilty of this. You're guilty. Everybody, in my estimation, where we think about something. When you had an issue with how I came at you, you brought up the left, and I'm disagreeing with the left at least 50% of the time. But you associated me with the left. When you've disagreed with others, I've heard you associate them with a group as opposed to treating them as individuals. So that seems to be counter to what you just articulated.
So I think that you're right to point out that I should characterize you as an individual with individual political views. Sure, I could do a better job of that. And when it comes to ideological grouping, I will say there is a difference between ideological grouping and, say, racial grouping. Right, race is an immutable characteristic of who people are. No matter how many Kenny G tunes you listen to, Stephen, you'll still be a black man, and no matter and no matter what racial stereotype I engage in, I'll still be a nerdy Jewish guy. That's just the way it is. But when it comes to ideological groups are quite real, obviously. And so describing people as a member of an ideological camp, I don't think is targeting a group in the same way as it would be to target blacks as a group, or Jews as a group, or Asians as a group, or any other immutable characteristic.
Hey, Ben, we're running out of time. I know you've got to go. I've got to go. I would love to further this conversation with you into the future. Your show, my show.